Buenos días y bienvenidos.
Buenos días.
Buenos días.
Buenos dias. We're getting there. I know it's early. We'll try it again. Buenos dias.
Buenos dias.
Yes. Welcome to Cedar Lane Unitarian Universalist Church. I am the Reverend Katie Romano Griffin, one of your ministers.
I'm Jared Wilson, your worship associate for today's service, and we are a religious community where love works. Whether you are joining us in person or online, know that whoever you are, whomever you love, whatever your gender identity, beliefs, or immigration status, you are welcome here.
If you're new to Cedar Lane, please raise your hand if you're comfortable doing so that our ushers and greeters can find you. Along with the gift they have for you is a beautiful brochure, and on the very last page, there's a place for you to share your information with us. Please complete that form and place it in the offering basket today, and thank you for choosing to worship with us.
I'd like to draw your attention to the announcements page that provides a wonderful snapshot of the many ways love works at Cedar Lane. One highlight for today: later on today at 2 p.m. right here in the sanctuary, we'll be having a special celebration, the Blessing of the Animals. That'll be with Reverend Katie and Kathleen Reedy, and it's a family-friendly worship event, so please bring your family and your animal companions or photos or mementos of them. And in this caring community, the pastoral visitors are an extension of the ministry team. Today's pastoral visitor is Betsy, and they'll be available at the Joys and Sorrows table during and after service if you would like to share a care or a concern.
Lastly, dun dun dun! That's right. We are having an all-congregation fire drill today after service.
Yay!
Fire drill! Fire drill!
Just to let you know, last year our youth and children made it out in 2.5 minutes. It took the adults 15.
This
I
morning
will
was
say,
good.
yeah.
9 a.m. did good.
Well, the first service did it in 7 minutes.
That's right. First service cut their time in half. So no pressure. What you'll need to do if you are upstairs is to follow the usher's instructions and leave by the nearest exit. So for those in the front couple of rows, you're going to leave through this door to my right. And if you're in the back rows, we are going to go straight out those back doors. Once outside, people going out these doors are going to walk into the side parking lot and down to the lower parking lot on the Culver Street side. That makes room for fire engines to come in. For those leaving this door, you're going to go down to the playground. Now, parents, if you'd like to be with your children, please join them at the playground and know that all children must be picked up from their RE classrooms. So children will re-enter the building, and then parents, please pick up your children at the RE classrooms. Thank you for your cooperation in doing this work, in preparing to keep us all safe. Now, please, let's turn and greet our neighbors. Official hello, Molly. Thank you for being with us today. Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power. Spirit, draw near. Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power. draw near.
Once more, Atonement Day has come.
All pretense gone, naked heart revealed to the hiding self.
We are on holy ground between the day that was and the one that must be.
We tremble, At what did we aim?
How did we stumble? What did we take?
What did we give? To what were we unseeing?
Last year's confession came easily to the lips.
Will this year's come from deeper than the skin?
Say then, why are our paths strewn with promises like fallen leaves?
Say then, when shall our yearning be for wisdom?
Say now,
Love and truth shall meet, justice and peace shall embrace.
As the Carr family, Al, Barry, Toby, and Oliver, kindle the chalice, symbol of our gathered community, please rise in body and or in spirit to share in unison the chalice lighting words on the screen. We kindle the chalice, symbol of our gathered community, for truth sought through a questioning heart and attentive mind, for love pursued through obstacles inside and outside our own heart, and for forgiveness and all it entails, the place where truth and love meet and merge.
Our song, Ani Ma Amin, is an ancient Hebrew affirmation of faith. The text, which is centuries old, can be interpreted as follows. I believe in God, in a greater truth, and in things greater than the world, in spite of all that has happened. I believe that the Messiah will come, and he will find me waiting. No matter how long he tarries, no matter how long he delays his coming, I will continue to believe. No matter what the future holds, I believe.
The song has had a rich history in the heart of Israel. It gained its greatest significance, however, during the Holocaust. Thousands of Jews entered the gas chamber singing this very song, proclaiming allegiance to God until their last breath. Eyewitness accounts tell us that the music would decrescendo to silence only as the gas choked the singers. No matter how long he tarries, he will find me waiting. Today we sing Anima Amin out of respect for the faith for which so many millions of children died. Today we sing Anima Amin, knowing that if we join hands and hearts and voices and sing the songs of those who suffer, we will learn that while we may be different, we are all truly beautiful. And if we, the children of the world, value all other children as beautiful people, we can prevent such atrocities from happening again in our lifetimes. This is why we sing. This is what we believe.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Dr. Henry Segrishi. It's my pleasure to lead the entire music ministry of Cedar Lane Unitarian Universalist Church. Obviously, the masthead is the adult choir, and that's a wonderful ensemble to work with. And we have a number of guest musicians who frequent the sanctuary and help us out. And then it goes down in age level to this marvelous youth choir, all of 4, because someone's out at a scout meeting and someone else got a great deal with parents to go to Iceland this weekend. So how are you going to argue with that? But I know that in a congregation that numbers over 700, there are more teens who are able to sing and probably could sing if somebody gave them a nudge. And we would bolster this ensemble here so that they would be mightier and they would sing with fuller voices about everything that we believe here at Cedar Lane Unitarian Universalist Church. I don't think I'm an unpleasant guy. I got a cool tie on this morning. It's got piano and trumpet and xylophone. And we actually are working on Born This Way by Lady Gaga. So, we have something for everybody, you know. In addition, it goes down lower to the younger group as well. Unfortunately, Jenny Crane can't be here this morning, I think because she's going to pick her daughter up at scout camp. There's something about a medal she needed to earn today. But Jenny was here earlier, and she was making a plea also for more young people to participate. And they can do that simply by going into the chapel between services and rehearsing. Not so hard for the children's choir, a little more challenging for the youth choir because we meet on Thursday nights at 6:30. But I honestly believe that if you believe in what we're doing here and you'd like to put your youngsters' voices behind it, then give that consideration for either the youth choir or the children's choir. And thank you very much.
You know, sometimes it can be really hard to forgive someone else. Now, I know some of the hardest times in my life, I've had trouble forgiving myself. And sometimes I've been hurt so badly by someone, I develop a grudge against them. Now, in fact, I bet a lot of us have carried some grudges around on our back. And if you've never heard what a grudge is before, a grudge is kind of like when you don't like someone because of something they did a long time ago. And even though we know how great it feels when we let go of a grudge, it can be pretty hard to do. You know, I wonder what someone smarter than me says about this. Here's a modern-day folktale from Barbara Marshman. In a land far away, a wise old man who knew a great deal about people because he traveled from place to place arrived at a strange village. In this town, all of the people were carrying what seemed to be great big bundles on their back. They couldn't look around well, and they never looked up because of the heavy burdens they carried. Well, puzzled, the wise old man stopped a young fellow.
My good man, I'm a stranger to your land, and am fascinated by these large bundles you all carry about, but never seem to put down. What is their purpose?
Oh, these?
Answered the young fellow in a matter-of-fact way.
These are our grudges.
My,
Said the old wise man.
that's a lot of grudges to collect at your age.
Oh, they're not all mine. Most of these grudges were passed down in my family.
The young fellow heaved a weary sigh.
See that man over there? I have quite a load of grudges against his family. His great-great-grandfather called mine a horse thief when they both wanted to be elected mayor.
The wise man looked around and shook his head sadly.
You all look so unhappy. Is there no way to get rid of these burdens?
We've forgotten how.
Said the young fellow, shifting his load a little.
You see, at first, we were proud of our grudges. Tourists came from miles around just to see our grudges. But after a few years, Grudgeville became a dreary place. Nobody came, and we had forgotten how to stop holding our grudges.
Well, if you really want to get rid of those grudges,
Said the old wise man.
I think I know 5 magic words that will do the trick.
You do?
Asked the fellow hopefully.
That would be a miracle. I'll go and have the mayor call the people of Grudgeville together.
And off they went, as fast as his grudges would let him. Again, as fast as the grudges would let him. Okay. The mayor lost no time calling the people to the village square. The mayor and the wise old man stood on a platform where they could see all the hunched over villagers. When the people had quieted down, our Academy Award-winning mayor said,
Good people of Grudgeville, a wonderful thing has happened. A very wise stranger has come into our town. He says he can tell us the magic words that will rid us of these grudges we have carried for generations. How many of you would like to be able to straighten up? Have your grudges disappear? Look at the world in a whole new way. Well, listen to the wise words of our visitor then, and do as he tells you.
My friends, these are simple words, yet some people find them hard to say.
Said the wise stranger.
I think you have the courage to speak them. The trick is that you must say them to each other and truly mean them. The first 2 words are, I'm sorry. Can you say them?
I'm sorry.
The other 3 are, I forgive you. Can you say that?
I forgive you.
Now, say these words to each other.
So turn to the person on your right and say, I'm sorry. Turn to the person on your left and say, I forgive you.
I forgive you.
I'm sorry.
There was a long pause.
I forgive you.
There was a long pause. There was a long pause. And then a loud grumble from the townspeople. First one person and then another said the words, and soon they were all saying them to each other, quietly at first, just like us, but then we got louder and louder. And then, would you believe it? Just like the wise man predicted, the grudges disappeared. What joy there was in the town. People were heard saying, look at those trees and how they have grown. And is that you, Jim? How good it is to see your face finally. There was dancing in the streets that day, and it wasn't long before the mayor changed the name of the town to Joyville. So sometimes you have to say you're sorry to put your burdens down, and that was heavy. Sometimes you don't have to. Sometimes you have to say you're sorry so other people can put their burdens down. Sometimes you have to forgive yourself or forgive others to make someone feel better, and sometimes you have to forgive yourself to make you feel better. These can be some of the hardest words to say to someone, but as you know, they can be some of the most important. So I wonder what are some other ways, besides apologizing, that you can show someone you're sorry. I wonder what the world would be like if we were all able to lay our burdens down and live a life in Joyville. Thank you. Please rise in body or in spirit and join us in singing our exit song, I've Got Peace Like a River.
There's more love.
There is more love somewhere. It's Sunday. There is more love somewhere. Words are on the screen after the first verse. We will, teachers, children, and youth will head on out to class. Yeah, I'm not taking this one.
There is more love somewhere. There is more love somewhere. I'm gonna keep it on till I find it. There is more love somewhere. More hope. There is more hope somewhere. There is more hope somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more hope somewhere. There is pure peace somewhere. There is more peace somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more peace somewhere. Thank you.
Let us settle into this time of meditation, reflection, and prayer. I invite you to allow your eyes to settle on the light of our community, the flame of our chalice, noticing how it dances as we breathe into this space collectively. And as you breathe into this space, I invite you to think of a time in your life, a moment, a memory where you felt unconditional love. Maybe that love came from a fellow Cedar Laner. Maybe it came from an animal companion, a coach, a teacher, a loved one, or someone else. But I invite you to breathe that love. Fill with it. Let it feed all of your cells. And as you exhale, let us share it in waves with the space around us. As we move through this litany, let us use our breath and this memory of love to hold all in our hearts. If you're living through the small and extraordinary milestones of life, let us take a breath together. And as we exhale, let us say, we hold you in our hearts. Taking a breath, breathing love. If parenting is your spiritual practice, we hold you in our hearts. Taking another breath. If you are mourning the loss of a loved one, we hold you in our hearts. Breathing love. Filling with love, sharing it with all the cells in our body, and exhaling love into this space, into community, out onto the streets, for the rescue workers and for the places that they head, out into the internet, to those who are watching our service online or catching up with us later, out into the community for those who cannot be with us today. Let us breathe in love and fill with it. If you are struggling with illnesses seen and unseen, with mental illness or addictions, we hold you in our hearts. Breathing in, if you have suffered abuse or injustice, we hold you in our hearts. Breathing love, filling with love, sharing love with our Cedar Lane community, and celebrating with Kay Scott, who just had her 102nd birthday last Sunday. Kay Scott, we hold you in our hearts. Breathing deeply, we mourn with the Reverend Ken McLean, whose brother Sandy passed on Thursday. Reverend Ken, we hold you in our hearts. Breathing love, filling with love, sharing it with our community. With this next breath, we mourn the loss of Nicholas Patrick McNulty Delcroix. We mourn with his parents, Maureen McNulty, Jim Eaton, and Christophe Delcroix, and his siblings, Maxim and Caroline. Breathing, we hold you in our hearts. Breathing love, filling with love, sharing it with every cell in our body and the community. As we enter this silence together, continuing to fill this space and beyond with love, I invite those who are remembering the loss of a loved one or honoring the anniversary of a loss to be held in this space of silence and love. Breathing love, filling with love, we hold you in our hearts. May all prayers be answered and hearts restored. You may be seated. In this time of forgiveness, I invite you to think of what my mentor, Mary Morrissey, shared with me, that forgiveness is a giving for. It is giving one thought for another. It is giving compassion to ourselves or someone else for the sake of liberation. It doesn't mean that we forget. It doesn't mean that we need to engage with someone who is a danger to us or others, but it does mean that we can go into ourselves for a deeper love and be liberated. At Cedar Lane, we are looking to give one way of life for another. We are seeking to build beloved community, and we're not going to get there without getting bruised. We are not going to get there without disappointing each other. We are not going to get there without breaking our promises over and over and over again. But we are ultimately a promise-making people. We are ultimately promise-keeping people. So we can forgive each other and ourselves and begin again over and over with love. Instead of contracting into ourselves with our resources of time, of talent, of treasure, of compassion, of love, we can choose to forgive and open ourselves to that beloved community. So I invite you to give generously, to give for the world that we are building together. Today's offering will now be gratefully received.
For the gifts that we are and the gifts that we bring to make this a beloved community, may we be grateful. Thank you, Molly. On the birthday of the world, I begin to contemplate what I have done and left undone. But this year, not so much rebuilding of my perennially damaged psyche, sharing up eroding friendships, digging out stumps of old resentments that refuse to rot on their own. No, this year I want to call myself to task for what I have done and not done for peace. How much have I dared in opposition? How much have I put on the line for freedom, for mine and others? As these freedoms are pared, sliced, and diced, where have I spoken out? Who have I tried to move? In this holy season, I rise self-convicted of sloth in a time when lies choke the mind and rhetoric bends reason to slithering, choking pythons. Here I stand before the gates opening, the fire dazzling my eyes, and as I approach what judges me, I judge myself. Give me weapons of minute destruction. Let my words turn into sparks. thus concludes today's reading.
Erev shel Shoshanim Netzena el Habustan Mor besaminu levona Lenaglish miftan Shachar Homayona Roshek Malet Lalim Pichel Habok Shonana Ektefenu li Laila yored leilat Veruk al Shoshana Shva Hava el kashlak shibalat Zemir shal hava Laila yored leyat Veruk shel Shoshan Oshva Hava al kashlak shibalat Zemir shel hava Erev shel shonim shnetzeina Erev shoshanim O laila yored layat veruch hashel shonava Hava el kashlak shibelat Zemir shel hava Zemir shel hava
Thank you, Henry and Susan. Wow. What a beautiful tapestry that is our worship experience today, with such beautiful music from our bel canto, our youth choir, Henry, Molly, and that wonderful story that really made me want to sing glory, glory, hallelujah, since I laid my burden down. Feel like singing hallelujah, since I laid my burden down. All right. You're making a singer out of me. Thank you. So the Jewish high holidays are with us. Rosh Hashanah, the new year, began last Sunday evening, and Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, is this Wednesday. And in the days between, called the days of awe or the days of repentance, people are called to meaningfully confess to and atone for all the harm they have done, and then go beyond acknowledging to do something to make it right, to repair what is broken and to begin again in love. Now, in the Jewish calendar, the period of atoning for the misdeeds of the old year comes only after the new year has already begun. Now, my Jewish religion professor at the University of Chicago Divinity School explained that this is because we humans need to be awakened by all the exciting possibilities of a new year before we are ready to look back at all our failures. In this way, he said, we are nourished by hope, even as we gain full consciousness of our failures in the past year. Now, I find great wisdom in this annual recognition of the need for forgiveness and atonement, because in the course of a year, we all receive hurts, and despite our best intentions, we hurt others. So there is wisdom in making space for forgiveness in our lives. Ancient Judaism made this process of seeking forgiveness an annual ritual. And speaking of ritual, my colleague, the Reverend Bill Sinkford, shared with me the story behind the term scapegoat recently. In ancient days, outside the temple in Jerusalem, the high priest would symbolically place all of the sins of the people, all those acts for which they needed forgiveness, onto a goat. And while he prayed for the people collectively, individuals in the crowd would also confess their own need for forgiveness, often aloud. The high priest then would send the goat bearing all these sins into the wilderness, the scapegoat. That's where we get the term. Yep, all the harms and hurts done by that very human people would be sent away, removed, and then the people would be able to start the new year afresh, to begin again in love. Apparently, this ritual had its problems, though. You see, the goat had the habit of coming back. So the unwilling goat had to be led away, actually pushed over a cliff at the outskirts of the city. I should have thought this one through, given we're doing Blessing of the Animals this afternoon. So sorry, Kathleen, Katie. But does this ritual appeal to you? You know, not the pushing the goat over the cliff part, but the ritual itself. Does it appeal to you? Yeah, good. Good, because if it does, you can do it online. E-scapegoat, it's called. Check it out. Bill also helpfully offered me that option, and I did check it out. And if you go on the website, you will see that it features a cute, pure, white cartoon goat with glasses. And the website also provides a space where you can anonymously type in your misdeed and ask for forgiveness. Now, some of the more interesting sins, without names attached, of course, are sent to a Twitter feed at Sinful Goat. Not at Donald Trump, at Sinful Goat. And here are a few examples. Using my phone when spending time with loved ones. Pretending to not notice the feelings of people who are sad when I don't have time to listen. Acting like I always know best. I lose my temper with my kids and my spouse. I love my dog more than I love my spouse. I get accused of it sometimes. I spend too much time feeling angry. And this one, I'm just writing this so I can see everyone else's. Is this a sin? Now, I don't know if this would help, but if it does, I'm all for it. What I do know in my own life is that forgiveness has not happened, at least not often, in a single epiphany, with a single prayer, or a single ritual, or a single tweet. Like the people of Grudgeville, I tend to hold on to my grudges and resentments and carry them around, usually for years. I get a lot of satisfaction, even pleasure, in holding on to my resentments because it makes me feel righteous. It feeds my ego, and it also makes me feel good being a victim. And why on earth would I want to give up all of that? And as long as I hold on to my anger, my smoldering resentment, and my victimhood, I don't have to acknowledge to myself or to others just how much I have been hurt. And it also allows me to use my anger, to hide behind my anger, use it as a shield to not acknowledge all the instances when I have hurt others or my own capacity to hurt others. It conveniently lets me hide. Now, I know I'm not alone in all of this. We all have, at one time or another, in some way or another, done or said something to cause harm in our relationships with our spouse or loved ones, with parents or children or grandchildren, with colleagues or friends, or even with fellow members in this congregation. We have all said or done something to hurt. None of us is totally blameless. We have all hurt others just as we have been hurt. And forgiveness so often is a process. It takes time. And it is hard. It is hard to give. It is hard to receive. It is hard to talk about. It's hard to even think about. It is soul work at the deepest level. I really wish it were so simple, like in that story, to just say, I am sorry. I forgive you. A few things to remember about forgiveness. For starters, forgiveness is not forgetting. You see, real wrongs can't be forgotten. If we could forget them, they weren't serious enough in the first place. And forgiveness is not ignoring or condoning or minimizing our pain and hurt. Forgiveness is not excusing. God knows how many times in the 28 years that Lolita and I have been together that Lolita has excused me. And she's there. She'll witness to that. I hope. Yep. And forgiveness can't be forced. Too often we say should and ought when it comes to forgiveness. We lose sight of a dimension of forgiveness that cannot be commanded, for which we can describe only the necessary but not sufficient conditions. Saying ought to forgive can sometimes trivialize the real harm suffered, like for those who have been victims of abuse. So then what is forgiveness? Forgiveness is first and foremost a gift to ourselves. It is an act of self-love, self-care, self-respect, self-healing. It is the permission we give ourselves unconditionally to let go of the pain of the past so that it does not define us into the future. The Reverend Paul O'Neill writes, forgiveness is the intentional act of moving away from a place of woundedness, letting go of that woundedness, letting go of the hurt feelings we harbor from that woundedness, and leaving it in our past in order to receive unencumbered the gifts of future growth. And forgiveness is giving up our right to even the score. It is letting go of our resentments, however righteous, and offering the persons who hurt us our friendlier attitudes to which they are not entitled, but doing so anyway. Marjorie Thompson, in her book Moving Toward Forgiveness, offers this explanation. She writes, "Forgiveness is a choice to leave behind our resentments and desire for retribution, excusing persons from the punitive consequences they deserve to suffer for their behavior." This came home to me this past week as I watched this amazing scene unfold in a Dallas courtroom. Right, when we watched 18-year-old Brant Jean hug Amber Geiger, the former police officer who is white, who shot and killed his older brother Botham Jean in his own apartment while he was sitting there eating ice cream. He said he forgave her and then proceeded to give her a hug after she had been convicted of murder and sentenced to 10 years in prison. Sarah Marvosh, who was covering the trial for the New York Times, said she had never seen anything like it. Most of the time, she said, you would see expressions of anger and grief. To see someone so young express forgiveness so unequivocally was striking. Now, some have criticized Brant Jean for showing such compassion to Miss Geiger. And the backlash has been compared to 2015, when survivors and relatives of those massacred in the Emmanuel African Methodist Episcopal Church offered forgiveness to white supremacist Dylann Roof. And both cases have led to some really important conversations about who, in circumstances like these, gets compassion and forgiveness and who doesn't. For example, there was this scenario of what would it have been if it was a black person who had killed a white police officer. Would there be such a situation unfold in the courtroom? Lots of things have been circling around, but that's not what I want to focus on. What I want to focus on is how moved I was to witness such a selfless act by this young man, and the faith that moved him to forgive is the faith that I hold on to the idea of redemption for all, that is so beautifully encapsulated in our universalist belief that a loving God will never condemn anyone to eternal punishment, that all are loved, all are welcome, even those who do dastardly things. And there are two Sanskrit terms that really lift up this, that try to point toward a response to the persistence of hurts and the difficulty of granting ourselves and others forgiveness. Those terms are karuna and maitri. Now, these words have no precise translation into English because Sanskrit is a nuanced language. An approximation would be offering unconditional friendliness toward oneself and then letting it radiate out to others and the world. So think of it as practicing loving kindness to yourself. And these terms are not about self-improvement. They're not about correcting all the flaws you believe you see in yourself. It is not about a personality transplant you might think you need. Maitri and Karuna are about seeing ourselves as we are and treating ourselves with the tenderness, the compassion, and the forgiveness that our universalist ancestors would tell us we deserve. I mean, imagine seeing yourself through God's eyes, or in Buddhist terms, through the eyes of the Bodhisattva. Imagine being seen completely, the whole cloth of who you are, warts and all, nothing hidden, but also imagine being seen and held in a tender and forgiving sight that could know your worst shortcoming, your least noble thought, that grudge you continue to harbor, that hurt you continue to hold, that could see all of that and still love you. Imagine that. And imagine doing that to yourself. Now, we may never be able to sustain such a view all the time because we are too complicated. We worry too much. We fear too much. We wish too much that we are somehow better or different persons. We strive for perfection. But perhaps a glimpse of ourselves with the tenderness of God's perspective is all we will ever be able to muster or manage. But perhaps a glimpse is enough. Isn't that the wisdom we seek and can find in the High Holy Days? That we need forgiveness every year and more often than that. In the words of the Jewish tradition, which are recited on Yom Kippur, God of forgiveness, forgive us, pardon us, help us atone, teach us to forgive ourselves. Create in us a clean heart, O God, and renew in us a generous spirit. Isn't that somehow what our Unitarian Universalist faith teaches us to be and to do here when it says we affirm and promote the inherent worth, dignity, and divinity of every person? To see ourselves and others, at least to catch glimpses of ourselves and others with eyes of loving kindness, maitri, karuna. My good colleague at River Road, the Reverend Nancy McDonald Ladd, in her book, After the Good News, Progressive Faith Beyond Optimism, writes, discovering the holy spark within our own wrongdoing is the whole point of atonement. Not beating ourselves over the head, not self-pity, not a selfish demand for absolution, but the freedom to take our sackcloth and ashes, our shame and guilt and long ignored suffering, and turn them into a transformed life. Turn them into a transformed life. So occasions such as the Jewish high holidays, the process of atonement and turning around, teshuvah, remind us that we have it in us to let go, to develop heart space, to reconnect, that we can work to mend what is broken. We can honor the holy in one another, and in this way, rebuild, repair a broken world. Now, it is not yet Yom Kippur, friends. The gates are still open. Indeed, as our Universalist ancestors believed, the gates will always be open. The path to wholeness is always available to us, if only we can muster the courage and take the risk to love, because we have not risked enough for love in order to make love work. And when we do, we build once more a world of greater wholeness with deeper understandings of truth and beauty, justice and compassion. And to that, I say, Amen. Since we have a few more minutes before our fire drill ritual, I invite us to join me in the spirit of prayer. And I close with this prayer of atonement by the Reverend Nancy MacDonald Ladd. God of all that which is within us, among us, and beyond us, in the busy rush between one day and the next, we confess to the casual indifference of each street corner passing, the self-protective stance of each missed opportunity for compassion. In worship, we prepare our hearts to reach again for that shining moment when for once we raise our eyes from the scuffs of our shoes, the gum on the sidewalk, the companionship of expectantly hovering obligations, and see there, looking back, the eyes of a stranger who sees a stranger, transformed from an obstacle into a human being through the pervasive magic of encounter. God of all, Spirit of hope, help us to remember that though we have fallen short, though we have broken our vows, though we have sinned in what we have done and in what we have failed to do, we are connected to you and to one another by a redeeming mutuality that both heals and demands, that gives comfort amid the holy agitation of our days. Help us to see one another, really see one another's pressing hurt and uplifting joy, and to answer those joys and those sorrows with every tool of transformation. Together, may we be both knowing and know, seen and believed, companions on the journey, created, imperfect, and committed. May it be so. Lashana Tova Tikatevu. May you be inscribed for a good year, at least, in the book of life. May it be so. And now, please rise in body or in spirit. As we sing our closing hymn, we begin again in love, number 1037, in the Teal hymnal.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
For each time that our fears have made us rigid and inaccessible,
we forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again.
For each time we have struck out in anger without just cause,
we forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
For each time that our greed has blinded us to the needs of others,
we forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
For the selfishness that sets us apart and alone,
we forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
For falling short of the admonitions of the Spirit,
we forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
For losing sight of our unity,
we forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
for those and for so many acts, both evident and subtle, which have fueled the illusion of separateness.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
We begin again in love, going in peace, as we go making peace, living gently, loving mightily, bowing to the mystery, and figuring out a way to spend 2 more minutes before the fire drill. May it be so. Let the fire drill begin.
Good.